Hello, everyone. How are we doing today? Good? Yes. This session is going to be a bit of back and forth between the audience and myself, so can get some more energy. Say yay! Woo! Nice. All right. I'm really glad to be here, and I hope you've been enjoying the sessions like the way I've been enjoying myself. I'm Sowmya. I'm part of the research team here at Google and also part of the trust and safety team. We kind of deal with the bad guys, all sorts of badness online so that our good users don't have to see the bad stuff, right? So when I say bad, this could be a variety of different things, starting from account hacking, hijacking type of things like phishing, malware, to more software issues like, bad words that are being used online on products that our users would be seeing. So it could be a variety of different things. And our user research team actually talks to users who actually encounter such type of badness, and also sometimes talk to people who proliferate such type of badness to kind of get a sense of where to draw the line. So that's about myself. And I've been at Google for about 5 years roughly, and all my time here at Dublin, and also part of the trust and safety team. All right, so I promised that this session will be interactive. So here we go. How many of you have written online reviews? Quick show of hands. That's almost everybody, right? And myself too. How many of you have websites where you have the online reviews functionality? Okay, at least 1/3 roughly. Given that we have such amount of experience with online reviews, let's do a pop quiz. What percentage of millennials trust online reviews as much as they trust their family and friends? You can shout the number. 70, 80, 90? Sorry, 80? 20? Okay. 91. All right. Online product reviews can increase conversion rates by?
3 to 5 times.
Okay. 3 to 5 times. Any other guesses in terms of percentages? 270%, so we're close enough. Yeah. All right, so this is the last question. So we'll get into the topic after that. 90% of users need less than how many reviews to make a decision? 3, 5, 10, 2, 10. I think you got the question paper. All right, so enough of the quiz. So you get the idea, right? So reviews are so critical, and users are looking at reviews, and they're looking at such few reviews, and they trust those reviews. So the reviews better be good. So what types of reviews are there, in general? How would you classify them? So there's the good reviews. These are the amazing reviews. Everybody craves for them, right? How many of you would want such reviews on your products? Some of you don't want them. And then there are these bad reviews. So of course, we don't want them, but then you can't do much, but that's good feedback. So any review system would be a mix of good and bad reviews, and this is how a user evaluating to buy your product is going to kind of evaluate and get an understanding. However, there is a third category of reviews that I'm very interested in, which is the ugly reviews, right? Any guesses what ugly reviews could be? 3 stars, 2-star type reviews.
Don't give any valuable feedback.
Sorry?
Don't give any valuable feedback.
Okay, don't give any valuable feedback. Close enough. Or empty feedback. That's great, right? You're almost there, right? So I'm going to introduce to you 5 ugly type of reviews that my team here, particularly the Google Maps team and the Play team, were kind of dealing with. And these are reviews that are written on listings for Google Maps or on reviews for apps. So the first one is abusive words, right? I'm not going to even try to read that thing, but you get the point. And then there are off-topic reviews. So you have an amazing product, say it's about like skiing, and then you have these reviews about beauty products, for example, so totally irrelevant. And then there are gibberish, right? So like those empty reviews, some of these users like to put all the interesting icons out there. And then there is solicitation. So nice place to ask for donations. So as people are reading through reviews, they can also donate some money because they've got money. Promotions, right? So again, a great place to do promotions because everyone knows, particularly the spammers know, that that's the place people are looking at and reading, right? So we had these 5 different types of ugly reviews, clearly not the good or the bad, but ugly. What do we do with them? Obviously, your answer would be just get rid of them, right? So find those ugly reviews, get rid of them. Isn't that an easy solution? But there's a catch to this. Moderating reviews is challenging and expensive, right? I can't emphasize that. It's much more bigger, like probably we need 72-point size font, challenge and expensive, right? Why is it challenging and expensive? So of the 5 different types that we discussed, there's a lot of work that goes into in trying to weed out these reviews from the good and the bad. It's almost like separating the wheat from the chaff. And when you have millions of reviews, it becomes a huge problem, right? So things like pattern matching, things like having manual reviewers to go through these loads of reviews to kind of find where they are, particularly things like off-topic reviews, they can't be automated. There has to be a human being reading and making a decision if this is relevant or irrelevant. You could also be spending tons of money and time on building ML models that kind of automatically scale and kind of deal with such keywords or bad words and the likes. And there's, of course, spam filtering algorithms which can help you. But all of these are time-consuming and resource-intensive. So we had this business challenge in terms of which types of ugly reviews impact user experience the most. So we have 5 of them, 5 different categories. How do we know which of these are bad? There are 3 different ways you can deal with them. The most easiest is go with your gut feel, right? So that's the easiest approach. Of these 5, I have encountered something and I hate them, so I'm going to go with that and solve for that because I only have a finite number of resources at my disposal, and I'm going to deploy them on that. So we started off with that approach because we didn't have time either, so we just went with whatever we felt was the most critical one. But then we felt maybe the logical next step or a more brilliant way of doing this is to look at some numbers, right? So could we look at review volumes? And we did look at the review volumes. So when we sampled a bunch of reviews and we tried to segregate them by categories, what we understood was the off-topic reviews were by far the biggest volume of reviews that we had. So we have a solution. Why not we just go deal with all the off-topic reviews? That way we get rid of 30% of bad reviews. Is that an optimal solution? I'm going to connect back to what Jamal just mentioned in his previous speech, which is it's not just enough to look at numbers. You should also have to hear and listen to the users, right? So this method really falls back from that point of view. So what we wanted to do at the end of the day was to actually bring in the users who are, end of the day, the experts. So we embarked on this user study. And as I said, we don't have a lot of time at hand to be able to do like a longitudinal, long-term study. So we just had like a couple of weeks, and we had to do something really fast. So we couldn't be like, bringing in users, recruiting them for a lab study, and then walking them through our journey, seeing their reactions. So we didn't have much time for that. What we instead did was to quickly pull up a mock of what our review system looked like. In this case, you're looking at the Google Apps, where you can, on Google Play. So for any app, there are a bunch of different reviews. And in this case, we asked the user to kind of look at the reviews and decide which app they're going to purchase or download. And in this case, we simulated it. So this was not even like on Google Play. We just had a bunch of screenshots, and users had to statically look at these screenshots and make a decision. There were 100 different reviews that each user had to look at before they made a decision to kind of download a certain app. And what we did in this process is also like bring in a small experiment, right? So the user does not know the purpose of the experiment, but as the experimenter, my objective was to see if I had different types of spam or different types of these abusive, like ugly reviews inserted and showed them to different types of or different groups of users, which ones actually degrade user experience. So that is how we designed our task. And we had several different groups of users, and in total we had about 1,000 plus users recruited via the Mechanical Turk platform. And it's, as many of you might know already, it is a platform where you can literally on demand get access to people who can do tasks. So this is what we used because we didn't have time to recruit users. And they were randomly allocated to one of the groups. And depending on which group you got, you saw a certain abuse type. For example, off-topic reviews, right? So they would see 100 different reviews, out of which a small fraction would be off-topic reviews. And then there would be another group which would be randomly allocated another task and say that task may contain abusive words in a small fraction. And out of the 100 reviews, there is one group, which is the control group, which sees all great reviews. I mean, the good and the bad reviews, never the ugly reviews. So that was a control group. And all of this is set up now. So what next? The biggest elephant in the room is measuring user experience, right? So how do you go about measuring user experience? It's easy to say, get these tasks done, and then see how it works from there. But what after that? Like, how do you measure user experience? There are so many different scales. So again, the system usability scale, many of you here might be aware of that. It's a industry standard scale. Is it suitable for our purpose? Then there's also Google's own HUT framework. Is this something we could apply? Turns out that we were unlucky, and these things don't apply for a situation. So no scales available. That's another interesting challenge. So we went about defining what user experience means in our case, and in this particular situation, how does user experience degrade when there is badness online, when people get exposed to bad content? Right? So it turns out that we have this new attribute called burden, which we discovered. And then it constitutes of different things like offensive experience, annoying experience, irrelevant, inappropriate, or spamminess of the experience. So we ended up creating this scale called the habit scale, the happiness, burden, and trust scale, which was the best one to be used for our situation. I have something coming later down the lane, which will give you more insight into how you could use habit scale. And these are all attitudinal in nature. So users are self-reporting on a scale on how they felt this way after they do those tasks. So it's always a good idea to also look at behavioral metrics, because self-reported scales always have their own kind of biases and challenges. So we topped it up with some behavioral metrics like task completion times and also task success rates, the typical ones you would use in a UX study. So what did we find, right? I talked so much about the design and the need to do so. It's going to be all useless if we didn't find anything, right? And what we found was, contrary to what we saw from the volumes chart, abusive words had the worst user experience. And you could literally see from this chart, and it's literally the one that you can see that stands out in blue as compared to the other ones. And this is something we wouldn't have discovered if we went with gut or another metric, which was to look at the volumes. And gibberish reviews, equivalent to the empty review, or the ones with all those funny icons. So interestingly, it led to decline in user trust, right? So not burden, not happiness. It didn't impact. Maybe some users felt happy because they were seeing some smileys. But it turns out that it impacts user trust. And this is a product that has billions of users, right? Would you want gibberish reviews on your product to tarnish your user trust? That's so hard to build. All right, so what did we learn from here? We took the user research to our product team, and this led to two main changes, right? The first action is, let's deprioritize off-topic reviews. We are spending too much time, but users don't seem to care. Second one, let's double down on abusive word spam. Let's take that resource that we are spending on off-topic reviews and double down on abusive words, because that's really what's hurting users. In terms of takeaways for the audience, there's two things I want to mention. First one, user research typically, right, in our minds is getting user to a lab, like sitting down with them, doing an interview with them, or doing a large-scale survey, right? There are but many other ways to do user research. So the one that I talked about took less than 3 to 4 weeks for us to put together. And this is from design to development to results. and socialization. So it's literally how fast we could do it. And there are so many resources that are available to all of us to be able to do that. So there are so many creative ways to do user research. And it's time to kind of sit down and see what's working best for your team based on the time you have, and also break those conventional ideas of doing user research. Second one, it's my favorite one. User research can help save dollars, right? So in this case, we really help the team to not invest too much in fighting all of the ugly reviews, but really refocus and re-strategize and take the resources that we already have and deploy them to something that users really care about. So in summary, if you've all been listening, this is the last question on the quiz. Which types of ugly reviews impact user experience the most? Sorry? Abusive, yes. But the truth is, it may not be the truth for your product, right? So go discover it for yourself. So if you want to do that, here's our habit framework. It's also published and available on our website, on our research website. So I've given the tiny URL in case you want to download the full paper. It has the entire methodology, our survey questionnaires, and also our findings. Good luck with looking at the paper, and you can get in touch with me and leave your feedback at my Twitter tag. And also, happy to answer any questions. Do we have time?
I think we have a couple of minutes. Anyone got any questions? I will say very quickly as well, the links will be sent out in clickable form. So I saw lots of photographs coming out there. So don't worry, we will send those out. Any quick questions?
Yes, there were.
Got one over here. This is a microphone, by the way. I'm not just throwing stuff at anybody. Talking to the black part. There we go.
So you mentioned that you, oh, my voice is strange. Okay, so you mentioned that you tackle abusive and promotion reviews first, but aren't those illegal? Can't you just delete them if somebody just spams on your website? Do you answer to them, or do you just try to delete them, is my question pretty much.
Right, so that's a good question. So you could try to understand the motivation behind why such a thing happens. If you think it's coming from like an automated robot or something that's just spamming your system, then clearly you just try to delete it in an automated fashion. But if you think there is a reason why somebody is doing that, then there's probably need to go back to them and provide that feedback. It could be because they don't understand your product, or maybe they really think the thing that they're trying to promote is associated with your product. Maybe it's an opportunity, right? So it's always good to go back and investigate what's really going on there. We do look at it from whether it is coming from a human being or a spam bot. If it's a spam bot, it's a clear case that we don't want to deal with that. But if it's coming from a human being, and if they're kind of purposefully damaging it, then they would be given some kind of, account level actions if it violates our policy, yes.
And there's one straight behind you there, if you can hop to the lady in the white. Perfect.
You said about the millennials trusting reviews. Do you have any insight into whether that trust remains the same if, for example, someone is only showing 5-star reviews? Is there an element of requiring or needing to see reality, which is whereby in most instances customers will never all be 100% happy? So is there a value in making sure that you have reviews in there that are 4 stars, real reviews, as well as not just showing 5-star only?
That's a very good question. So we've seen this kind of answered in multiple different ways. I have noticed that in some of our surveys that we've done, users literally say, like, what about the reviews did you not like? So this is one of the questions we asked in a survey. And the user said, too good to be true, too many 5-star ratings, right? So that there lies the verdict. And one approach I've seen as a design solution is, I know on Google Play we do show like the most positive review and the most negative review, so that way it balances off. And the user can, and it's not the same all the time. It kind of rotates across different 5-star and 1-star ratings, so they can get the entire spectrum. Like, what's great about the product? What's the worst about the product? So there are some creative ways to also like show these reviews.
I think it's worth pointing out that in the early part of Sowmya's talk, it was very clear that a healthy review system has the good and the bad. Then we were talked about the ugly, but you lose credibility straight away if, surprisingly, all 5-star reviews, people just don't buy into that, and they will be suspicious. And it is healthy then just to see, okay, there's there's some critical thinking on, okay, this was a bad review from this person, but those things aren't too strong for me, so I'm okay with that. And it is a much more believable system. So it is a thing to think about on how to surface them right. One more question, and we got one at the back there. Yep.
Yeah, I have a question about takeaway number 2. So user research can save you cash. What are a couple ways that we can prove to the stakeholders that this statement is true?
Yeah, so going back to the same case study, I can just say that in our experience, this is not even something the product teams were willing to engage in, because they really felt like, look at the volumes, it's really the one that we need to get out of the list. But then it turns out that when you do the user research, you can show to them that instead of having to build these, it's so difficult to build ML models to kind of deal with off-topic reviews. But we've not even understood if it is something that's need to be fixed, right? So in our case, we actually went back and provided them with the statement that if all of the resources are going to be deployed into kind of dealing with abusive words, then it can actually improve user satisfaction. So the study doesn't stop there. Some of the ways you can demonstrate that to your stakeholders is to do follow-up surveys, something like happiness tracking throughout the year, right? After you've made the change, do a more longitudinal kind of user experience measurements to kind of demonstrate to them to say, now that we brought in this new change, are our users feeling happy? Are they feeling better? So once you have that data, you can actually literally go and demonstrate that back to them.
Okay, that has us at about time, ladies and gentlemen. So join me in a huge thank you to Sowmya.